She told the lawyer I wasn't part of the real family. So we froze everything that still had my name on it. The humid August heat in Miami made my police uniform stick uncomfortably to my skin as I walked through the front door of the house I'd called home for 23 years, ready to share the news that would change everything. After 30 years of service with the Miami-Dade Police Department, I had finally received approval for my retirement package, complete with a pension that would allow my wife Sandra and me to live comfortably for the rest of our lives without financial worries. What I discovered that evening would shatter the foundation of everything I believed about my marriage and force me to confront a betrayal so deep that it would fundamentally change how I viewed trust, family, and the people we choose to build our lives with. If this story is hitting close to home for you, please comment below letting us know where you're watching from, hit that like button, and subscribe to our channel because we truly help families who are going through these difficult situations. Your support helps us continue sharing these stories of overcoming adversity and finding strength in the darkest moments. Sandra had been acting strangely for the past few months, taking phone calls in private and spending hours on her laptop with the screen angled away from my view whenever I entered the room. As a detective with 3 decades of experience reading people and situations, I recognized the signs of secretive behavior, but I attributed it to stress from her job as a real estate agent in the competitive Miami luxury market where million-dollar properties were her specialty. Our marriage had weathered many storms over the years, including the dangerous nature of police work, the irregular hours that came with detective assignments, and the financial pressures of raising 2 children in an expensive city while building toward retirement. Sandra had always been supportive of my career, understanding that police work required sacrifices from the entire family, not just the officer wearing the badge. The house we lived in was purchased 15 years ago in Coral Gables, a prestigious neighborhood where Spanish colonial architecture and manicured lawns reflected the success we'd achieved through hard work and careful financial planning. The property was in both our names, as were most of our major assets accumulated during our marriage, including investment accounts, retirement funds, and the vacation rental property we owned in the Florida Keys. Sandra's behavior became increasingly suspicious when she started insisting on handling all the household finances personally, claiming she wanted to optimize our investments for retirement and that her real estate background made her more qualified to manage our portfolio. She had always been involved in our finances, but this level of control was new and made me uncomfortable given the secretive nature of her recent activities. The breaking point came when I returned home early from what was supposed to be my last week of active duty, planning to surprise Sandra with the final retirement paperwork and discuss our plans for traveling and enjoying our golden years together. Instead of finding my wife relaxing at home, I discovered her in our study with a man I didn't recognize, both of them hunched over documents spread across the desk that had been my father's before he passed away. The conversation I overheard through the partially open door would haunt me for months afterward. The stranger, who introduced himself as attorney Marcus Rodriguez specializing in family law and estate planning, was explaining to Sandra how she could protect her assets in the event of a divorce by establishing that certain properties and accounts were her separate property, acquired before the marriage or through inheritance from her family. Sandra's response was what truly devastated me. She told the lawyer that I wasn't really part of the real family when it came to financial decisions, that I had been a contributing member but not an equal partner in building their wealth, and that she needed to ensure her children from a previous relationship would inherit everything that mattered without interference from outside parties, referring specifically to me and any potential claims I might have on assets we'd built together. The cruel irony was that Sandra had never had children from a previous relationship. Our 2 kids, Michael and Sarah, were our biological children together, born during our marriage when we were young and building our life from nothing. The inheritance she mentioned to the lawyer was fictitious. Both of us had come from middle-class families with modest savings, and everything we owned had been acquired through our combined efforts over 2 decades of marriage. I remained hidden outside the study, listening as Sandra systematically outlined a plan to transfer assets into accounts with only her name, claiming that the house had been purchased primarily with her income from real estate commissions, and that my police salary had been supplemental rather than essential to their financial success. Every word was a calculated lie designed to minimize my contribution to our shared life and maximize her position in a potential divorce settlement. The attorney was taking detailed notes as Sandra described how she planned to document that various investments and properties had been acquired through her independent business success, rather than our partnership. She specifically mentioned wanting to establish a timeline that would show her real estate career as the primary source of their wealth, conveniently ignoring the fact that my stable police income had made it possible for her to take risks in real estate during the early years when commissions were unpredictable. When Sandra mentioned that she had already begun moving money from joint accounts into personal accounts to protect against any potential claims, I realized this wasn't just planning. It was active financial manipulation that had been going on for months, while I focused on completing my police career and looking forward to retirement. The woman I'd trusted with my life and future had been systematically positioning herself to destroy me financially. The most painful moment came when the attorney asked about my pension and retirement benefits from the police department. Sandra laughed coldly and said that police pensions weren't real wealth, and that she had carried the financial burden of the marriage, while I was playing cops and robbers for 30 years. Her dismissal of my career and sacrifice cut deeper than any physical wound I'd received in the line of duty. I quietly retreated to my car and sat in our driveway, trying to process the magnitude of the betrayal I'd just witnessed. Sandra, the woman I'd shared my bed with for over 2 decades, the mother of my children, the person I'd trusted with every aspect of my life, had been planning to destroy me financially while I counted down the days to retirement and looked forward to spending our golden years together traveling and enjoying the fruits of our labor. The tactical training from my police career kicked in as I realized I needed to document everything I'd heard and take immediate action to protect myself. I used my phone to record a detailed account of the conversation while it was fresh in my memory, noting specific phrases and claims Sandra had made to the attorney. I also took photographs of the attorney's car in our driveway and researched his background to understand his specialization in high-asset divorce cases. That evening, Sandra acted completely normal, asking about my day and discussing dinner plans as if she hadn't spent the afternoon plotting to financially destroy our marriage. Her ability to compartmentalize and deceive was frightening, making me question how long this planning had been going on and what other lies she might have told throughout our relationship. The woman sitting across from me at dinner felt like a complete stranger. Over the next few days, I conducted my own investigation using skills developed during 30 years of police work. I discovered that Sandra had been systematically moving money from our joint accounts for over 6 months, transferring funds to accounts in her name only and creating a paper trail that would support her claims of financial independence. The amounts were significant. Over $180,000 had been moved without my knowledge or consent. I also found evidence that she had been working with a different real estate attorney to explore options for removing my name from the deed to our house, claiming that an error in the original paperwork needed to be corrected. The proposed changes would have made her the sole owner of our family home, leaving me with no claim to the property where I'd lived for 15 years and invested tens of thousands of dollars in improvements and maintenance. The vacation rental property in the Keys, which had been a joint investment project that we'd worked on together for years, was also being targeted. Sandra had contacted the property management company to change the paperwork, claiming that she was now the primary owner and that all rental income should be directed to her personal accounts rather than the joint account where it had always been deposited. Armed with evidence of Sandra's financial manipulation, I contacted my own attorney, Elena Vasquez, a tough family law specialist who had handled several high-profile divorce cases involving police officers and their pensions. Elena immediately recognized the sophisticated nature of Sandra's planning and warned me that I was dealing with someone who had been preparing for this divorce much longer than I realized, possibly with professional guidance from the beginning. Elena's first recommendation was to freeze all joint accounts immediately to prevent Sandra from moving additional assets while we developed our strategy. We also placed a hold on any changes to property deeds and contacted all financial institutions to flag my accounts for any suspicious activity. The speed with which we had to move was shocking. Sandra had been planning this for months while I remained completely unaware of the danger. The confrontation was inevitable, and it came 3 days later when Sandra discovered that the joint accounts had been frozen and her planned transfers had been blocked. She burst into our bedroom at 6 in the morning, screaming about financial sabotage and demanding to know why I was interfering with her legitimate business activities. Her mask had completely fallen away, revealing a calculating and manipulative person I'd never seen before. Sandra's fury was both terrifying and illuminating. She accused me of spying on her and violating her privacy, conveniently ignoring the fact that she had been secretly planning to destroy our marriage and steal assets that legally belonged to both of us. Her sense of entitlement was staggering, She genuinely seemed to believe that she had the right to unilaterally dissolve our partnership and take everything while leaving me with nothing. The argument escalated when I confronted her about the meeting with Attorney Rodriguez and her claims that I wasn't part of the real family. Sandra's response was to double down on her position, stating that she had invested more in the marriage and that my police work had been a hobby rather than a real career. Her complete dismissal of 30 years of public service and the risks I'd taken to protect our community was devastating. When I mentioned the pension and retirement benefits she'd dismissed so casually, Sandra laughed and said that government benefits were worthless and that she had been the real breadwinner throughout our marriage. This was particularly galling because my steady income and benefits had provided the security that allowed her to build her real estate career without the pressure of supporting our family's basic needs during the lean early years. The divorce proceedings that followed were among the most contentious cases Elena had ever handled. Sandra hired an aggressive attorney who immediately filed motions claiming that I had financially abused her by freezing the accounts and that my police pension should not be considered marital property because it was government compensation rather than real wealth. The hypocrisy was stunning. She wanted to claim all the assets as hers while denying me any claim to the retirement benefits I'd earned through decades of service. Discovery revealed the full extent of Sandra's planning and deception. She had been working with Attorney Rodriguez for over 8 months, developing a comprehensive strategy to minimize my claims on marital assets while maximizing her own position. They had created fake documentation attempting to show that certain properties and investments were her separate property, and she had even gone so far as to backdate some real estate transactions to make it appear that her income had been higher than it actually was during the early years of our marriage. The most shocking revelation came when we discovered that Sandra had been having an affair with a wealthy real estate developer named James Morrison for over a year. Morrison owned several luxury properties in Miami Beach and had been advising Sandra on how to protect her assets in preparation for leaving our marriage. The affair explained her secretive behavior and sudden interest in controlling our finances. She had been planning to leave me for a wealthier man while ensuring she could take as much of our shared wealth as possible. Elena presented evidence showing that Sandra's claims about being the primary breadwinner were completely false. While her real estate income had been substantial in recent years, my police salary and benefits had provided the stable foundation that made her career possible. During the early years of our marriage, when she was building her client base and commissions were irregular, my income had covered our mortgage, utilities, and basic living expenses while her earnings went toward building her business. The court case revealed the true character of the woman I'd been married to for over 2 decades. Sandra's testimony was filled with lies and revisionist history designed to minimize my contributions and maximize her claims. She attempted to portray herself as a financially independent woman who had been held back by marriage to a police officer, ignoring the fact that our partnership had enabled both of our careers to flourish. Judge Patricia Mendez, who had presided over numerous complex divorce cases, seemed particularly unimpressed with Sandra's attempts to rewrite the history of our marriage. During one heated exchange, the judge noted that Sandra's claims about her independent wealth were contradicted by tax records showing that my income had been essential to their financial stability for the majority of their marriage, particularly during the years when she was establishing her real estate career. The pension issue became a major battleground, with Sandra's attorney arguing that retirement benefits earned during a police career shouldn't be subject to division because they were taxpayer-funded, rather than privately earned. Elena countered by demonstrating that police pensions are deferred compensation earned through years of public service, often in dangerous conditions, and that Sandra had benefited from the stability and security my career provided throughout our marriage. The vacation rental property case was particularly satisfying to win. Sandra had claimed that she had purchased and developed the property independently, but Elena presented evidence showing that I had contributed not only financially but had personally performed much of the renovation work during my off-duty hours. Photographs and receipts clearly demonstrated that the property had been a joint project from inception to completion. The final settlement, reached after 8 months of contentious litigation, was more favorable than I had initially hoped. Judge Mendez awarded me 50% of all marital assets, including the house, investments, and vacation property. My pension was protected from division, and Sandra was ordered to return the funds she had illegally transferred from joint accounts during the months before I discovered her planning. Sandra's relationship with James Morrison ended shortly after our divorce was finalized, apparently when he realized that she hadn't successfully secured the level of wealth he had expected her to obtain from our marriage. The irony wasn't lost on me. She had destroyed a 23-year marriage and damaged her relationship with our children for a man who abandoned her when she proved less financially valuable than he had anticipated. The most painful aspect of the entire ordeal was the impact on our children, Michael and Sarah, who were forced to watch their parents' marriage implode in the most public and acrimonious way possible. Sandra had initially tried to turn them against me by claiming that I was being vindictive and greedy, but as the evidence of her planning and deception became clear, they began to understand that their mother had orchestrated the entire situation. Michael, who was 21 and finishing his degree in criminal justice with plans to follow in my footsteps in law enforcement, was particularly devastated by his mother's betrayal. He had grown up proud of my police career and couldn't understand how Sandra could so casually dismiss 3 decades of public service as worthless. Sarah, who was 19 and studying business, was shocked by the calculated nature of her mother's financial manipulation. The children's relationship with Sandra became strained when they realized that her actions could have left me financially devastated in retirement after 30 years of dangerous police work. They understood that she hadn't just been planning to leave me. She had been actively working to ensure that I would struggle financially for the rest of my life while she lived comfortably with her new partner. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I moved to a beautiful waterfront condo in Key Biscayne, using my share of the settlement to purchase a property with stunning views of Biscayne Bay. The irony was perfect. I was living in luxury while Sandra struggled to maintain her lifestyle after losing half of the assets she had assumed would all be hers and facing the reality that her affair partner had no intention of supporting her long-term. The retirement I had planned to share with Sandra became a solo adventure filled with possibilities I had never considered during our marriage. I traveled to places we had talked about visiting together, took up fishing and sailing, and discovered interests and hobbies that had been suppressed during years of focusing exclusively on work and family responsibilities. My relationship with Michael and Sarah actually strengthened after the divorce, as they came to appreciate the sacrifices I had made during their childhood and the values I had tried to instill in them about honesty, integrity, and treating others with respect. They were ashamed of their mother's behavior and made efforts to rebuild our relationship on a foundation of mutual respect and understanding. Sandra's real estate career suffered significantly after the divorce, partly because of the negative publicity from the court case, but also because her unethical behavior became known within Miami's tight-knit luxury real estate community. Several former clients distanced themselves from her when they learned about her financial manipulation during the divorce, concerned about trusting someone who had so systematically deceived her own husband. 2 years after the divorce, I met Elena Rodriguez, a retired teacher who shared my interests in travel and outdoor activities. Our relationship developed slowly and naturally, based on genuine compatibility and shared values rather than financial considerations or social expectations. Elena understood and respected my police career and the sacrifices it had required, providing a stark contrast to Sandra's dismissive attitude toward public service. Elena had also been through a difficult divorce and understood the pain of discovering that someone you trusted completely had been planning your destruction. Our shared experiences created a bond that went beyond typical romantic relationships. We were both survivors who had learned valuable lessons about resilience, self-worth, and the importance of surrounding ourselves with people who genuinely care about our well-being. The wedding Elena and I had 18 months after we met was a small, intimate ceremony attended by close friends and family, including Michael and Sarah, who had grown to love Elena and appreciate the happiness she brought to my life. The contrast with my first wedding to Sandra couldn't have been more dramatic. This was a celebration of genuine love and commitment rather than a social performance designed to impress others. Sandra attended neither the wedding nor any family events involving the children, having become increasingly isolated as the consequences of her actions continued to impact her relationships. She had lost not only her marriage and half of her wealth, but also the respect of her children and many of the friends who had witnessed her behavior during the divorce proceedings. The vacation rental property in the Keys, which had been divided as part of the settlement, became a source of ongoing conflict when Sandra tried to force a sale because she couldn't afford to maintain her half. Elena and I eventually bought out her portion, converting the property into our favorite getaway destination where we host family gatherings and create new memories with Michael, Sarah, and their eventual families. 3 years after the divorce, Michael graduated from the police academy and began his career with the Miami Beach Police Department, following the path of public service that Sandra had so contemptuously dismissed. His pride in wearing the uniform and serving his community was a vindication of the values I had tried to instill in both of our children despite their mother's attempts to undermine the importance of my career. Sarah completed her business degree and started her own marketing company, demonstrating the entrepreneurial spirit she had inherited from both parents but applying it with the ethical standards she had learned from witnessing her mother's destructive behavior. She often credits the divorce experience with teaching her the importance of honesty and integrity in all business relationships. The financial security I achieved through the divorce settlement, combined with my police pension, allowed me to live comfortably while also helping Michael and Sarah with their education and career development. The money Sandra had tried to steal from our marriage became the foundation for supporting our children's success and ensuring they had the opportunities they deserved. Sandra's attempts to rebuild her life after the divorce were hampered by the reputation she had earned for financial manipulation and dishonesty. Several potential romantic partners distanced themselves when they learned about her behavior during our marriage, concerned about trusting someone who had so systematically deceived their spouse of over 2 decades. The legal bills from our contentious divorce consumed a significant portion of Sandra's settlement money, leaving her with far less than she had expected when she began planning to leave our marriage. The attorney fees, combined with the loss of my steady income and benefits, forced her to downsize significantly and abandon the luxury lifestyle she had been so desperate to maintain. 5 years after that devastating day when I overheard Sandra telling the lawyer I wasn't part of the real family, I was living a life filled with genuine happiness and surrounded by people who valued honesty, integrity, and authentic relationships. Elena and I had traveled to Europe, Australia, and South America, creating memories that far exceeded anything I had ever experienced during my marriage to Sandra. The most satisfying vindication came when several of Sandra's former clients reached out to me during the divorce proceedings to share their own experiences with her questionable business practices. Apparently, the same patterns of manipulation and deception she had used against me had appeared in various real estate transactions, suggesting that her behavior was part of a consistent character flaw rather than a temporary lapse in judgment. Michael's career in law enforcement flourished as he earned recognition for his dedication and integrity, qualities that directly contradicted his mother's claims that police work was worthless or unimportant. His success became a powerful rebuke to Sandra's dismissive attitude toward public service and validated the values I had spent 30 years trying to uphold both professionally and personally. The house in Coral Gables where Sandra and I had built our life together was eventually sold, with my portion of the proceeds providing additional financial security for my retirement. Elena and I purchased a beautiful home in Coconut Grove, creating new memories in a space that wasn't haunted by the ghosts of my failed marriage and Sandra's betrayal. Today, 7 years after discovering Sandra's plan to destroy me financially, I wake up every morning grateful for the investigation skills that allowed me to uncover her deception before it was too late. The woman who told a lawyer I wasn't part of the real family had actually been the outsider all along, someone who was willing to destroy the people who loved her in pursuit of financial gain and social status. The lesson I learned from this experience was that trust must be earned continuously, not just granted once and assumed to last forever. Sandra's betrayal taught me to value the relationships where trust is mutual and authentic, like the one I've built with Elena and the renewed connections I have with Michael and Sarah based on respect rather than obligation. Elena often reminds me that Sandra's behavior revealed more about her character than it did about mine, and that her attempts to diminish my worth and contributions were projections of her own insecurities and moral failures. The woman who claimed I wasn't part of the real family had actually excluded herself through her choices and actions, leaving behind a legacy of manipulation and deception that will follow her for the rest of her life. The financial security I maintained through careful planning and legal protection allowed me to retire with dignity and enjoy the fruits of 30 years of public service, despite Sandra's attempts to steal everything I had worked for. Her failure to destroy me financially became her own destruction, as the costs of her manipulation and deception ultimately exceeded any benefits she might have gained from her scheming. Looking back, I realized that Sandra's betrayal was actually a liberation, freeing me from a relationship built on lies and manipulation and opening the door to genuine happiness with someone who values the same things I do. The woman who tried to exclude me from the real family had actually excluded herself, while I went on to build an authentic family based on love, respect, and shared values with Elena, Michael, and Sarah.